Now on to some stock market being crashed stuff really quickly. All right, let's go.
Those tariffs are aimed at part, and the president talks about bringing manufacturing jobs to America.
For anyone who somehow has lived under a rock for the past however many days, Trump put a bunch of tariffs on a bunch of countries that made no sense, that were based on imports and exports and deficits, not about actual tariffs that are reciprocal. And then in the most epic move, in the most art of the deal move, he just removed the tariffs and then added more to China. And we're at like, what, 134% last I checked on China?
The White House talked about iPhones being made here in America. Some economists have said that it would cost thousands of extra dollars to buy an iPhone. Is that realistic?
I think I don't know the answer to that. But what I do know is the immediate harm is going to be very significant. And it is going to, I was just in Target the other day buying something, and I looked around there. Virtually all of those products sold in stores like Target are going to see significant increases in prices if Trump gets his way with tariffs. That's going to hurt working people a whole lot.
This is Marge Watchorn, a manager at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. She's worked with the federal government for 30 years. Thank you for your service. Thanks. Marge is a Democrat from Ellicott City, Maryland. Marge?
Senator, what would you say to federal employees who are concerned about the careless workforce cuts being effectuated by Elon Musk and DOGE?
I want to say two things about that. First of all, thank you and your colleagues for your years of service. The vast majority of federal employees are trying their best to do the jobs that have to be done to protect the American people, and I thank you all very much for that. The idea that Mr. Musk goes around and with a chainsaw, I mean, that is his metaphor, a chainsaw, slashing jobs all over the place, telling people based on nothing that they have poor performance records, throwing them out into the street is outrageous. But I want to say something else above and beyond. And by the way, I was just on the floor a few hours ago. They have decided in their brilliance, and I suspect this is a Musk initiative, to lay off, they have a proposal to lay off 83,000 workers at the Veterans Administration. Got that?
I think that'll play over really well with Republicans. Famously, they hate veterans. So, well, they actually do. But famously, they love talking about how much they hate veterans, right, guys? That's what they don't spend their time talking about how we need to do more for veterans, right? I don't think that that's what they do. Last time I checked, they hate America and they hate veterans. So I think this will play out really well. Firing 83,000 vets. Yeah. Yeah. Dude, your profile is so peak. This profile picture. It's worse than a felony. It's woke. I support the tariffs. I've always wanted to work in a sweatshop run by Nestle that pays me in the drinking water they stole from me. Me too. Yeah, me too. Me too. Denims, I've decided to stop dealing with my local bar as my trade deficit with them is close to 100% in their favor. Until they balance that out, I'm imposing a 200% tariff. What I expect them to buy has yet to be determined. It's just absurd. It's just insane. Oh my God. It's just so crazy. Like, okay, two things. One,
you lose out.
No. H&R Block, no. Please stop. Please. I think YouTube has been initiating new ads that get through in the ad block, which is really annoying. But anyways.
Very significant post on Truth Social. I'm just going to read the whole thing. Based on the lack of respect that China has shown to the world markets, I am hereby raising the tariff charged to China by the United States to 125% effective immediately. At some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realize that the days of ripping off the USA and other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable.
Ripping off the USA by selling us some of the most cheaply made labor and goods.
Conversely, and based on the fact that more than 75 countries have called representatives of the United States, including Departments of Commerce, Treasury, and the USTR, to negotiate a solution to the subjects being discussed relative to trade barriers, tariffs, currency manipulation, and non-monetary tariffs, that those countries have not, at my strong suggestion, retaliated in any way, shape, or form against the United States. Here's a key line. I have authorized a 90-day pause and a substantially lowered reciprocal tariff during this period of 10%, also effective immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Do you see, Ryan Nobles, the hand of any pressure?
This is good, guys. This is good. This is a good thing, actually. Threaten any countries that decide to, not just do whatever the U.S. wants them to do. And I'm sure it'll play out really well. Right, guys? Right. Guys, is it good if U.S. consumer sentiment is now worse than during the Great Recession? Is this a good headline?
What bothers me most is that they say the countries they exploited the most are the ones exploiting them.
I know. M-Wise, thank you. Beachosaurus Rex, thank you. Strawman, thank you for the gift sub. Dylan, Lesbian Monstera, Gay Ghost Prince, M. Carp, Demon Stasis, Moshe Tards, Zesty, Toru, Romaldez. Thank you guys so much for the subs. Thank you.
This is CNN Breaking News.
And we begin this hour with breaking news. President Trump's tariffs and their fallout, fueling a lot of pessimism about the U.S. economy.
The problem is that the one defense that conservative talk show hosts have is that this was all just like a bargaining tactic, and this was all part of the deal, and he would never actually put such insane tariffs in play, and he was always going to pull them out. But it was a bargaining tactic. But we didn't get anything out of it, is the problem. What did we get by saying, we're going to tariff you? Just kidding.
We'll take a closer look at that grim new report in just a moment.
Yeah, and that anxiety has really weighed heavily on Wall Street. You've seen it these last several days.
Someone think of Wall Street.
Stocks are just struggling to end the week in the green, just hours after China made its latest move in the trade war. CNN's Matt Egan is in New York. So, Matt, walk us through this new consumer sentiment report, these numbers and what they mean.
Well, Pamela, the mood on Main Street is getting darker and darker. These are historically weak numbers. So the University of Michigan came out this morning and said that consumer sentiment in the United States this month plunged by 11% to the second lowest level since records began back in the 1950s. That's pretty stunning when you think about it. This is lower, weaker sentiment than at any point during the Great Recession. The only time it was worse than right now was 3 years ago, back when Americans were panicking over $5 gas. Of course, today, gas prices are low. The problem is all of these chaotic moves out of Washington, the trade war, and of course, the turmoil on Washington. The internals of this report were ugly. Americans marked down their views on the current situation. They're becoming less optimistic about the future. They're increasingly concerned about unemployment. And this is a number that I think is going to get the attention of officials at the Federal Reserve. Consumers are now bracing for a nearly 7% increase in prices over the next 12 months.
Because, like, what's been not talked about at all by obviously Trump administration, by Fox News, by Republicans, by conservatives, is that this whole tariffs are going to bring the jobs back here is bullshit. Sorry, blanket tariffs are not going to bring jobs back. They're going to decrease jobs. Let's just for the just for the sake of argumentation, let's just pretend like the tariffs were on only raw goods. To be clear, tariffs are on everything, but let's just pretend like the tariffs were only on raw goods for just 1 second. You know, companies that make stuff here in the US, if they suddenly have to pay 2, 3, 4 times as much as what they were paying before for the same good, they won't be able to stay in business anymore. if you have like a restaurant and you do like fine dining or whatever, as one random example, and you import a bunch of Italian cheeses and whatever the fuck else, and Italian pasta or whatever, and suddenly now you have to pay 10 times as much. You can't afford that. Your business goes out of business because you can't afford the expenses needed to run your business. And this is like across the board for anything that we produce here that requires steel. Now it's more expensive. Anything that we produce here that requires lumber, well, now it's more expensive. Construction companies. First of all, construction companies are probably going to be the most fucked in the next couple months because, one, we're deporting half the migrants, and most of the migrants are too afraid to show up at work because they're afraid they're going to get deported by ICE if they show up. Okay, labor's already fucked. Whatever, we'll just hire some Americans to do some construction. Okay, sure, great. Oh, we're also tariffing lumber. So you have a labor shortage and you have a lumber shortage, and you think these companies are going to stay in business and they're going to be able to keep people on the job? You think they're going to be able to afford constructing homes to like with millions of dollars for like a fucking shack? Most solar panels are manufactured domestically, but the silicone, it's a different story. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Ha 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 ha. You support illegal immigration. Maybe we should just abandon all laws. Trump is the best president of all time. Trump is just smarter than you. Oh, dude. You shouldn't tell everyone that public school was really hard for you and you studied every day and you still got Fs. You shouldn't tell people that, man. You shouldn't advertise that. Okay? Please. Please.
That is very high. That's a significant increase from the month before. In fact, that's the highest level since the early 1980s, back during that inflation crisis. Keelan, I want to read you about this decline in sentiment from the University of Michigan. They write that this decline was, like last month's, pervasive and unanimous across age, income, education, geographic region, and political affiliation. So this is really across the board. This was clearly a brutal report, especially for the White House, but there's economic implications here too. Consumer spending, it's the #1 engine of this economy. And if people are feeling bad enough about the economy that they start to pull back, maybe they don't take that vacation, they don't buy that car, there's going to be real economic implications. We know that sometimes people tell pollsters they hate the economy, they keep shopping anyway. But if they do cut back spending, there could be significant trouble for the economy. Pamela?
Yeah, I think a lot of us can relate to those questions right now. What do we do? Should we wait to buy? What do we do with our money? And given what you just laid out with the consumer sentiment and the expectation for inflation, could that be why you have several corporate leaders warning that the U.S. could be heading toward a recession or is in one?
Yeah,
warning.
If you think about it, you can place all blame for this on Jimmy Fallon. He interviewed and humanized Trump during 2016, and now he can't buy Switch 2s. Fuck Jimbo Fallon.
I don't know that the logic is sound, but I'm always down to shit on Jimmy Fallon, okay? All right. I'm down. Jimbo fall off. Oh, God. This chatter's still going. I don't think you're smart enough to do political commentary since your brain is obviously the size of an amoeba's. Oh, you know so many big words. Oh, who knows so many big words? Oh, I bet mommy is very proud of you. Okay, now make sure you do all of your chores or you don't get snacks later tonight, okay? Okay, oh, you know, so keep studying. Yeah, you know so many big words. Amoebas don't have brains, but go on. Oh, ah. It's my favorite thing when someone calls me stupid, but then they show how stupid they are in the sentence calling me stupid. Ah, please, please stop. It's humiliating for you. All right, anyways.
We heard another warning just this morning.
Wait. I'm getting word. There's a press conference that just started. Or sorry, a briefing right now.
Brought these Americans home in 80 days. This administration will continue
I'm going to be honest, guys. I know that, like,
to work hard to bring Americans
this
home
style
from
of
around
clothing
the
is coming
world.
back into fashion a little bit, but I
As
think
I've
it's
said
really
before,
ugly.
and I will say it again today, everybody in this room has access to the
There's
most
just no cunt on it at all. It's just, ugh.
transparent and accessible president in American history. The cabinet meeting yesterday was further proof. President Trump asked each secretary to provide an update to all of you in the media
Lamari, thank you for the 5
on the
gift subs.
critical
Thank
work they
you.
are doing at their respective agencies to deliver on his agenda.
Looks like it
And according
smells
to
like
new reporting from the
mothballs,
Washington
yes.
Times, who I believe is in this room today, President Trump answered nearly 100 questions from the press, all of you, during his first 3 open press cabinet meetings this year. That's nearly 20 times the number answered by Joe Biden in cabinet meetings during his entire 4 years in office. In more excellent economic news that was released yesterday, the Consumer Price Index report showed inflation fell to 2.4% in March, smashing expectations for the second straight month in a row. This marked the first drop in consumer prices dating all the way back to the COVID pandemic. Prescription drug prices saw the largest monthly decline on record. Prices for airfare.
And I'm sure all of these things were caused exclusively by Trump policy, right? Ha 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 ha. I wouldn't even be surprised if the drop in like pharmaceutical pricing was just exclusively because of insulin being capped at what, $35? This is what I was talking about, by the way. I work in manufacturing scientific research equipment in the U.S. Most of our customers are government-funded research agencies. A lot of our raw materials are bought from China. I hope I still have my American manufacturing job in 6 months. It's just...
Denims is streaming.
Yeah. Nag, thank you so much for the 10 gift subs. What the hell? Thank you. Thank you so much. Hassan Scamcoin, thank you for the 17 months. Nag,
Used
thank you for the
vehicles
Prime.
and car insurance all decreased as well. And energy prices fell 2.4% in March, driven by plummeting gas prices around the country. Also yesterday, House Republicans answered President Trump's call.
Ass in U.S. history. You can go see it now in the Oval Office. He is full
All
spread,
to move
American bald eagle style. He'll do
forward
tricks
the
on it
budget
and make it
resolution
the Tony
and
Hawk
officially
sound
set the
effect.
stage for the passage of one big, beautiful bill. The American economy will boom after this bill is passed, and the rest of the president's pro-growth agenda goes
Plummeting, mine went up. I like how she said that, and multiple people in here are saying that their car insurance went up.
into effect. The largest tax cuts and deregulation in history, coupled with our energy industry unleashed and renegotiated trade agreements that put America first, are the ultimate formula to usher in the golden age of America.
The golden age!
On that note,
yes!
more than 75 countries have now reached out to the Trump administration, eager to address the trade issues that have exploited America and hurt our workers in the process. The phones have been ringing off the hook to make deals, and these countries wisely heeded President Trump's warning not to
make what deals?
Big 5-0, thank you, Denims, for introducing mold into my lives.
How are you supposed to remedy?
Klein, you are my best friend for paying streamers rent.
How are you supposed to remedy a trade deficit with a country that has the resources to send us things that we can't produce here or things that we can't manufacture here? Like, what do you want Madagascar to do? You want them to what? Like, you want the country of Madagascar to suddenly start buying hundreds of millions of dollars worth of American goods? Because we buy a lot of vanilla from them? It doesn't make any sense. Like, it literally doesn't make any sense at all.
retaliate, and as a result, they were rewarded with a 90-day pause and substantially lower reciprocal
A real friend would, but Madagascar's a fake friend.
tariff rates during this period so potential solutions can be achieved. Past presidents just willingly accepted the failed status quo on trade that ripped off our workers and our companies. But that's not who this president is. He creates his own leverage and negotiates deals better.
Everyone in Madagascar has to buy one Ford 150, sorry, F-150 for every kilogram of vanilla we buy. It's like she's reading a story, not a press
than
release.
anyone else who has sat in the Oval Office before him, and that process is currently underway. On another matter, the deadline for registration under the Alien Registration Act is today. All foreign nationals present in the United States longer than 30 days must register with the federal government. Failure to comply with this is a crime, punishable by fines, imprisonment, or both. As President Trump and Secretary Noem have both said, if you register and you leave now, you choose to self-deport. You may have the opportunity to return later legally. But if not, you will be arrested, fined, deported, never to return to our country.
Let's go fascism. Woo,
the Trump administration will continue to enforce our nation's immigration laws. We will not pick and choose which laws.
Yeah, the people that are out there fucking picking our radishes, they need to get the fuck out of this country now. Okay, I'm sure a lot of Americans would be very happy to do physical labor in the sun, in the humid heat for 12 hours a day. I'm sure there's a lot of Americans that would be down to do that 5 days a week, 10 hours a day, in the heat for $2 an hour. I'm sure we can find that.
Laws to enforce. We must know who is in our country for the safety and the security of our homeland and for all American citizens. I also have a note from the First Lady to share with you on this Friday. On Tuesday this week, First Lady Melania Trump celebrated the advancement of the Take It Down Act in the House Energy and Commerce Committee. The important legislation passed the committee with bipartisan support, and as you may remember, the president talked about this bill in his address to a joint session of Congress last month. The First Lady remains dedicated to her championing child well-being, ensuring that every young person can thrive, and of course, championing her Be Best agenda. We urge
Elon Musk said all that.
Congress to swiftly pass this important legislation. Here in our new media seat today, we have Jordan Berman. Jordan is a social media content creator and influencer and a lawyer who grew up following breaking down the news from a neutral perspective. Jordan is the host of her own podcast called Unbiased Politics, where she dissects the top stories from the week from a legal perspective.
Why is there an ad for some lady's podcast in an official White House press hearing? What is this press briefing?
Jordan focuses on bringing back real journalism from a nonpartisan perspective and has mastered explaining complex legal decisions to a mass audience in the short-form context. Her two biggest platforms are TikTok and Instagram, where she has roughly 500,000 followers on each.
What is this ad? What is this ad?
With that, please kick us off, Jordan.
Thank you. As you know, yesterday the House passed the SAVE Act, and many married women, soon-to-be married women, are concerned that the new voter ID requirements may inhibit their access to the polls. What assurances can you give women voters in America to ease their concerns?
Sure. Well, the SAVE Act, as you mentioned, was passed by the House yesterday. This is the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. I believe I'm getting that correct. And this act is a common sense measure. It would require proof of citizenship for voting in our elections. The Democrats have been fear-mongering about this bill, have been saying that married women, if their name has changed, they didn't change it on their identification, would not be able to vote. That is complete.
That is true.
Fallacy. There are outlined in the bill about how to avoid that. The president very much supports a common sense solution to ensuring that only citizens can engage in our elections. This is critical to improving the integrity of our elections and also the trust that American citizens need to have in our electoral process. So the president supports this bill, and that is a myth that has been proven wrong by the text of this bill. And I believe some of the co-sponsors of the bill have been very vocal in addressing that. And certainly I myself, as a married woman, would not stand before this podium if the president did not support such a common sense.
Literally not true. Under Republican SAVE Act, your driver's license won't be enough to vote. You'll need a passport, which more than half of Americans don't have and costs at least $130. A birth certificate with your current legal name, which nearly 70 million married women lack. Military service papers, not a military ID alone, with sensitive info.
Put some common sense on this deck.
Shut the fuck up, Chatter. Shut up, quick tolerant.
Measure.
Thank you. For my next question, I actually want to give a voice to the American people. I sourced the question from one of my listeners. Her name is Bryn. She is from Oregon. And she asked, what, if any, plans do you have, the administration, for the money that will be generated by tariffs imposed on foreign goods? How will the administration facilitate the development of American industries when many critical components, labor, parts, etc., are much cheaper and more feasible from foreign entities?
Liz, thank you so much for the 5 gift subs.
It's a great question from your listener,
Thanks.
and I want to thank her for submitting it to you to ask. That's the part of the new media seat is so that everyday Americans across the country have a voice in this room. So thank you again for being here. Thanks for the question. The president's point about his trade and tariff agenda is to bolster our manufacturing industries here in our country, to bring down the cost of living here in our country, and to ensure that we are maintaining critical supply chains here in America. We cannot be dependent on countries like China if we want this country to be strong and wealthy. So the president wants to restore wealth to America by shoring up these jobs here at home, which will result in good paying jobs and higher wages for the American public. And so Americans should trust in that process. He effectively implemented tariffs in his first term while driving down the cost of living in this country, and that's what he's focused on doing again. Thank you.
As a follow-up question, could I just ask, are there any specific ideas that the administration has as to what that revenue, specific tariff revenue, will be used for?
Yes, to the heart of your question, the president has spoke about the trillions of dollars that he expects in revenue from tariffs and how we can use it to pay down our debt and to ensure that we are no longer faced with a crippling national debt in the trillions that is going to bankrupt our nation for future generations. So that money coming back home will make America in the green rather than in the red, which any small business owner across the country, I believe, can appreciate.
Thank you so much.
It's not how debt works. I know I've explained this 100 times, but that's not how debt works. Debt, national debt operates the same way that debt for a company works. Okay? Companies that have no debt are bad companies. If you are a multi-million-dollar corporation and you do not undertake any debt, you are a failing company.
First time here in a couple weeks. Loving the new hair.
It is good policy as a multinational corporation to have debt. You take on small amounts of debt so that you can maybe build more factories, as an example, so that you can increase production of your good, so you can sell more of that thing, and then the debt gets paid off with the new revenue that you got, right? And that's how countries work. National debt isn't inherently bad the way that debt for people is bad, right? Generally, if you are as a person are in debt, it's usually not a good thing. Although something like a mortgage, it's not necessarily a good or bad thing. Having a mortgage, does that mean that you are in the red? Would you view owning a house and, having a mortgage, would you view that as being in the red? Like, this is bad. I can't be in debt ever. No, of course not, because debt is a tool. Now, if you have payday loans, you're fucked. You're actually fucked. That's bad. That is bad. Loans and debt that people undertake are very different from loans and debt that corporations have or countries have.
Thank you. Kelly.
Hey. Tomorrow there will be negotiations between the United States and Iran in Oman. What are the president's chief goals for that, and is he satisfied with how Iran is responding to this? They don't want direct face-to-face negotiations, instead sort of old-school shuttle diplomacy where they're in separate rooms and messages are passed back and forth. So is the president comfortable with the arrangement there, and what is the chief objective?
Well, I have spoken to both the president and also his national security team who will be engaged in these discussions. These will be direct talks with the Iranians, and I want to make that very clear. I also spoke to the president just last night about his goal when it comes to Iran. And he has reiterated repeatedly to all of you publicly and also privately to his team here at the White House, his ultimate goal and the ultimate objective is to ensure that Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon. The president believes in diplomacy, direct talks, talking directly in the same room in order to achieve that goal. But he's made it very clear to the Iranians, and his national security team will as well, that all options are on the table, and Iran has a choice to make. You can agree to President Trump's demand, or there will be all hell to pay. And that's how the president feels. He feels very strongly about it.
And can you update us on Mr. Witkoff in Russia and what's happening with direct communications with Vladimir Putin?
I can confirm that Mr. Witkoff is in Russia to have direct communications with the Kremlin and with Vladimir Putin. This is another step in the negotiating process towards a ceasefire and an ultimate peace deal in Russia and Ukraine. As these negotiations are ongoing, I obviously will not get ahead of the president or his team, but I think the president has been quite clear that he's been continually frustrated with both sides of this conflict, and he wants to see this fighting end. He wants the war to end. We believe we have leverage in negotiating a deal, to a peace deal, and we're going to use that leverage. And the president is determined to see this through.
Sure. Thanks, Caroline. President Trump has said China wants to make a deal on tariffs. The president says he has a great relationship with Chinese President Xi. He's willing to speak with him directly. Why doesn't the president just pick up the phone and get this ball going?
All of the things the president just said are true. The president, as I said from the podium just a few days ago when I was up here, would be gracious if China intends to make a deal with the United States. If China continues to retaliate, it's not good for China. The United States of America is the strongest, best economy in the world, as
the strongest, best economy,
evidenced by the more than 75 countries who have called the administration immediately to cut good deals. So the president wants to do what's right for the American people. He wants to see fair trade practices around the globe, and that's his intention and his goal.
So is he waiting for
the most goodest boy? Dude, I'm like actually unironically a little concerned for Speed's well-being. I'm just saying America historically hasn't had a great history with how they've treated Black men, especially ones that undermine the United States and its power and stronghold over the country, over the world, really. And Speed making China look that based, and saying free Palestine every opportunity that he gets. If we're the best, how are we getting ripped off? Because Biden. Duh, liberal.
China to make the first move here?
I'm not going to comment on communications that are happening or may not be happening, or either way. We'll leave it to our national security team to get these discussions underway. And as always, in the effort of transparency, we will provide updates moving forward. But the president has made it very clear he's open to a deal with China.
Why is he optimistic that China's going to make a deal or wants to make a deal if they're not talking? Where's that optimism come from?
He's optimistic.
Hey,
Sean.
why would any of our allies work with us to isolate China in a trade war if we're treating friend and foe alike?
Who is the woke liberal here? Who's this woke liberal reporter? Are you with the Associated Press? I'm sorry, excuse me?
You'll have to talk to our allies who are reaching out to us. The phones are ringing off of the hooks. They've made it very clear they need the United States of America. They need our markets. They need our consumer base.
Why would other countries participate in this essentially blockade of China? Because of course they would, because Trump's phone is ringing off the hook. Next question, stupid.
Saw Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the Oval Office with the president, saying that he was going to bring down all of their monetary tariffs and their non-monetary tariff trade barriers as well. We've heard from South Korea. We've heard from Japan. The president has spoken to Vietnam. We have Italy coming to the White House next week. There's a reason for that, Sean, and it's because they need the United States of America and our business model and our markets to survive, and the president is using that leverage to our advantage. Michael.
Hey, thank you, Caroline. Two-part question on China. Beijing says it will simply ignore any further tariff escalations from the U.S. Does President Trump see this as China backing down? And as a follow-up to that, what do you say to people like Shark Tank's Kevin O'Leary who say, you guys simply haven't tariffed China enough?
Look, the tariff rate on China remains where it was yesterday, at the 145% level. The president made it very clear when the United States is punched, he will punch back harder. And he hopes to make a deal that benefits the American worker and our companies that have been ripped off for far too long. And he's finally taking bold and courageous action to do that. You know, taking on China is, in the terms of trade and,
Dude, you
and
know
tariffs.
what? You know what? Let's just go 500% tariffs. You know what? Let's just go to war with China. You know what? Sure, why not? Roll out the tanks, boys. Come on.
something that both Democrats and Republicans alike have spoken about for decades. President Trump is finally doing it.
Caroline, real quick, the president of El Salvador is coming to the White House on Monday. Does President Trump want him to bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia with him?
The Supreme Court made their ruling last night very clear that it's the administration's responsibility to facilitate the return, not to effectuate the return. I believe the Department of Justice just filed another brief in the lower court. I would defer you to that for any updates. But as you mentioned, President Bukele will be here at the White House on Monday to talk about the cooperation that is at an all-time high. And we very much appreciate President Bukele and El Salvador's cooperation and the repatriation of El Salvadorian gang members who the previous administration allowed to infiltrate our country. Sure.
Thank you very much, Caroline. The president spoke quite highly of the great relationship that he has with the Turkish president. We know that the president might be heading off to the Middle East very soon. Is he planning to meet with the Turkish president, either here in the White House or in Turkey? Any plans?
I don't have any details about the president's overseas trip other than to say he was surely going to Saudi Arabia. There could be more countries as part of that trip. We're working on the details, and as I've said repeatedly, we will provide the details of that trip as soon as possible.
A trip to Turkey, or his invitation to the Turkish president, is under consideration?
I'm not going to comment on the details of the trip, but once they're confirmed, I will certainly let you all know. Yes, Stephen.
Thank you, Caroline. I'd like to ask you about presidential health and also about tariffs. On presidential health, are there plans for the president's physician to come here and take our questions? And also, President Trump repeatedly makes remarks about the former president's health. Is he considering using his executive powers to bring any greater transparency there?
As I have said, the president is undergoing his long-scheduled physical. It's a yearly physical that every president receives, and we will provide an update on that by the president's physician as soon as we possibly can.
And about the former president and transparency regarding his health, are there...
Well, I can tell you there was certainly a lack of transparency from the former president, from the entire former administration, and frankly, a lot of people in this room when it came to the health and the competence of the former president of the United States, Joe Biden. There was one of the greatest cover-ups and frankly political scandals this nation has ever seen. It's been
biggest scandals, ignores January 6th.
Unraveled in some recent books that are being written by journalists who engaged in that cover-up and scandal, which is quite ironic. But this
Trump tries to steal election. Okay.
President is clearly committed to transparency. You in this room see him and hear from him on a daily basis. You in this room know from covering him, it's hard to keep up with him. He is a machine working around the clock every single day. And the physician, after today's physical, will provide an update on the report in the effort of transparency.
If I could ask about tariffs, there have been big swings this week in the Treasury bond yields. There's a theory that it might be because of China dumping these as leverage, driving up costs for U.S. loans like mortgages. Does the White House have evidence that this is in fact a result of Chinese dumping? And if so, is there a message on that?
Not to my knowledge, but I would check in with the Treasury Department on that. I can tell you, I know our Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent, is keeping a very close eye on the bond market. He spoke about it at the White House this week, and I know he's keeping his eyes on it day to day. Ed.
Thanks. Thank you, Caroline. So the administration, I have an administration source who's telling me that we're weeks away from the first deal with the country over tariffs. Where is the administration? How soon can we see that? And what country is that first one?
I won't reveal or get ahead of our trade team as these negotiations are obviously ongoing, but I can tell you very good progress has been made. Jameson Greer was on television this morning, and I spoke to him, and he confirmed that more than 15 offers are already on the table, which is remarkable in just a mere matter of days. And as I said earlier, we've heard from more than 75 countries around the world. This is a team effort. The president has a team of great, brilliant advisors who have been with him every step of the way, and all of them will be divvying up the workload. And I just want to give the president and his trade team credit for taking this on. This is a massive undertaking. There's no doubt about it. We take it very seriously. The president is determined to renegotiate global trade on behalf of American workers. And again, you've seen people on both sides of the aisles calling for this for years, but I think no other president lacked the courage or maybe the work ethic or the stamina to take on such a task. And I know there were some questions about the president's delayed departure earlier to Walter Reed. I'd like to address it was because he's working on this very issue, so he was running a bit behind this morning.
On the 90-day pause, what would the president need to see in order to extend that 90-day pause for countries on tariffs?
Well, I think the president addressed this yesterday when he said he's hoping that there will be good deals made before the 90 days is up, and we will cut those deals as soon as we possibly can, country by country, tailor-made deals for each and every country as they all propose unique challenges and unique assets to each country, advantages rather, and when that 90-day mark hits, the president will make that decision then.
One more, if I could, on a different subject. So a bird earlier attacked my colleague, Peter Doocy, during a live shot at
I'm wondering if that's why Peter is absent from the seat. Is he doing okay?
He's recovering.
Has anyone checked on him?
He's recovering. Is anyone looking into that incident?
I could check in with GSA to see if anybody here is looking into it. I also understand there was a mouse in the briefing room earlier today, so I'm hoping somebody checked in on that.
Mao.
As I'm hoping it doesn't run up here and distract me. That would be a good way for all of you to distract me, actually. Have a mouse come run up here. So I'll get an answer for you.
How is that you? We need you. Please, Chairman
and out of
Mao.
respect for our good friend Peter. Jeff.
Why is American consumer confidence so low?
Look, I think there's a great optimism in this economy, great optimism for the American people, a lot of reason for people to feel optimistic. The president is, as I just said, trying to renegotiate the global trade agenda that has ripped off the American people for far too long. As he said, this is going to be a period of transition. He wants consumers to trust in him, and they should trust in him. Look at what he did in his first term. And I just want to reiterate all of the reasons to be confident since you asked, Jeff. For those watching at home, yesterday the CPI report, inflation declined massively. Consumer prices are dropping for the first time in years. Energy prices are down. In fact, oil prices are down 20% since this president took office. Wholesale prices fell again. There have been trillions of dollars in investments into this country. Every day, the president is signing executive orders to cut regulation, especially when it comes to Environmental Protection Agency, our energy industry. That's going to unleash the economic boom in this country that we saw in the president's first term. So trust in President Trump. He knows what he's doing.
Guys, why don't you trust President Trump?
This is a proven economic formula.
What is he asking of Americans?
It's a proven economic formula that we got from ChatGPT. We're taxing those fucking penguins. They had it coming.
At this time, he talked about transition costs, transition problems. Is he asking something specific for Americans to do?
No, I think the president is asking for Americans trust in Trump, as I just said, trust in his economic agenda and formula. It's a proven formula that works. And by the way, clearly the American people do in fact trust him because they did just overwhelmingly elect him to this office. Jennifer.
Is he going, I'm asking about the physical, is he undergoing any general anesthesia? And can you outline any of the other tests that he's doing today?
He is not. He is undergoing quite a few tests, imaging. Again, it's a it's a yearly physical, so there's quite a lot that goes into it to make sure the president is accomplishing all of his goals, and we will provide a readout of that as soon as we can.
And will you be committed to releasing all of the results, as many of the results as possible?
Of course, yes. The president's physician will do that. I spoke with him this morning.
Karl,
Sure.
will you guys also consider releasing the president's fitness plan? He actually looks healthier than ever before. Healthier than he did 8 years ago, and I'm sure everybody in this room could agree. Is he working out with Bobby Kennedy, and is he eating less McDonald's?
I can confirm the president is in very good shape, as you see, on a near daily basis here. And in that vein, thank God it's Friday. It's been a very long and busy week here at the White House. We will see you all on Monday, and we will release the...
This is so embarrassing. Oh my God.
The results of that report as soon as we can. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you.
Have a great week.
USA, USA. I can't even imitate Elon Musk if I wanted to, man. USA, USA. Ah, man. Man. I think we might be cooked. No, we're good. No. We're good. Everyone just close your eyes and pretend like China isn't making fun of us. Everyone close your eyes and pretend like we aren't being made fun of. No. No. Please, man. Oh. It's good. This is good, guys. Look at MSNBC, fear-mongering. This is not going to end well. Americans worried about 401k.
Joining us now, NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell.
Look at these woke liberals.
NBC senior markets correspondent Dominic Chu. Heather Boucher, former member of the Council of Economic Advisors in the Biden administration, and former Republican Congressman Charlie Dent from Pennsylvania. So, Dom, what is this survey about, and what's your takeaway from it?
So the University of Michigan survey, as you just point out, Jose, it did reflect, as you point out, a pretty dramatic drop in consumer sentiment. So that University of Michigan consumer sentiment read of 50.8 is a drop from a prior level in the previous month of 57. It was also below economists' forecast for a read of 54.6. A lot of that has to do with how scared consumers are, as you point out, of inflation becoming a much bigger force in the American economy over the next year. The expectations on that front really jumped. Survey respondents now think that inflation a year from now will be closer to 6.7%, which is notably higher than the prior read of a 5% rise in inflation. It is, by the way, also the highest expectation since November of 1981, when the country was still reeling from the effects of sky-high inflation back then. This sentiment data, as you point out, comes across all of those different demographics. So what it does tell you is that there is a renewed worry, Jose, about inflation in the American economy.
Heather, what do you make of it and this University of Michigan survey, poll, et cetera? How much weight does it have?
Well, this is what they call soft data. It's a survey of how people feel about the economy. And let's be clear that because of the strong economy that this president inherited, the hard data has continued to come in fairly good. You know, we got new data on inflation this week that shows that it slowed, and, you know, we are not seeing that being a problem in the backward-looking data. But to this report from the Michigan survey on how people are feeling about the economy really is indicative of a lot of Americans who are scared that prices are going to go up. And, of course, we're already starting to see firms announcing job losses or layoffs or not hiring because of the chaotic way that the president is implementing economic policy. So I think we need to take this very seriously. We need to, and I'm certainly that the Fed will take this very seriously in terms of understanding just how worried people are about the direction of the economy and what it will mean for them, both as workers and as consumers.
And, you know, the president has talked about essentially rearranging the world economic order and has been touting companies announcing hundreds of billions of dollars of future investments into the United States. Those would presumably create maybe thousands or tens of thousands of jobs in the future. But let's talk specifics about today, Heather. What do you think the impact is of these Chinese 125% levies?
145%
announced overnight.
Well, what we're doing, what we're seeing this administration doing with this chaotic tariff policy, on again, off again, up, down, maybe, you know, now certainly the president is focused on the trade war that he has started with China. And what that means is that prices are going to rise in the short term. The president is arguing, well, there'll be some pain, but companies are going to invest. But what the administration is not doing is creating the conditions or the wherewithal or the security and the certainty for firms to make those investment decisions within the United States. So on the one hand, he's making things that we import more expensive, but on the other hand, he's taking all of these actions that are not improving investment conditions here in the United States.
On the one hand, he's doing something really stupid that doesn't benefit anyone. But on the other hand, he's doing something really stupid that doesn't benefit anyone.
DOGE has been doing these chaotic, chainsaw cuts all across the federal government, de-investing in R&D, making it harder to enforce labor laws. So we don't think that, maybe these won't generate good jobs down the line. A whole bunch of things are happening behind the scenes because we're also focused on the chaotic tariffs. And yet, even though firms have said, hey, we're going to invest, we need to wait until we see that data show up in the cold, hard data. And what we know of the first Trump administration is even though he did those big tax cuts for rich people and for corporations, and even though he did tariffs, we did not actually see that show up in a ramp up of investment that would be commensurate with his policy shifts. So I think that, I'll wait until we actually see that showing up in the hard data. I think all signs are today that this is a chaotic time for investors, a chaotic time for businesses, and that is why you're already seeing firms announcing layoffs and announcing that they are stalling investments here in the United States.
What firms would those be that are going to be stalling investment in the U.S.?
Well, you already heard that Stellantis was laying off 900 workers, for example. Cleveland Cliffs has announced layoffs of, I believe, over 1,000 in Michigan and Minnesota. You've already heard that CEOs are announcing that they've got layoffs. I think it was 37% are considering that there may be layoffs coming down the pipeline. So we're starting to see these bubble up. But, this has been a very tumultuous week, a week and a half, to say the least, in terms of economic policy. And the trade war with China just adds more uncertainty, even as we know that there were some structural challenges in the trade relationship between the United States and China that need to be dealt with in a sane and sensible way so that we can continue to see the kind of equitable economic growth that we want to see.
Who is this lady, dude? Who is this lady that's just talking about shit getting worse and saying, but maybe it'll get better
here in the domestic economy?
Kelly, what is the White House saying about all this?
Well, as you might expect, the president, who believes very strongly in his policies and likes to maintain flexibility, and we've seen a lot of that so-called flexibility in the way that he has responded to this with the pause, and certainly with China responding, the president has, through his trade representative, has described that as unfortunate. He has also said that all of the countries want to come negotiate. We don't have any indication yet that China is eager to do that. We've, in fact, seen China respond with their own retaliatory tariffs. So that remains a complex and difficult relationship, and one that is very consequential for a lot of the everyday goods that Americans like to buy in our very strong consumer culture, and of course for all of the importers and small businesses that rely on that supply chain. The president himself, who likes to promote his policies and brings his salesman and branding and pitchman style to his office, today used his social media post to say that it's all going very well. He talked about this, saying, we're doing really well on our tariff policy, very exciting for America and the world. It is moving along quickly, with the initials DJT. So a placeholder perhaps today from the president, who is separately going to Walter Reed National Military Medical Center for his annual physical, the first since he's returned into office. So there's a period of time today where we won't be seeing the president on camera. Then he heads to Florida. But he can use his social media posts, and certainly top advisors can be out talking today. And we saw that with the trade representative, who described the response from China as unfortunate. Jose?
Charlie, what do you think the political cost is to the president? And I'm just wondering, how do you think folks at the Rust Belt, used to be called the Steel
Don't say that.
Belt, feel and think when they think about tariffs and about the status quo and about the thousands of jobs that were lost over the decades, even before the 80s, but that have been lost in the Steel Belt, in the Rust Belt, and in so many other places in our country?
Well, my father was in the steel industry for 30 years. I lived and died that with the Bethlehem Steel collapse. But I can tell you right now that a lot of people in this part of the country are a lot more sophisticated in their understanding of the economy. We're done crying over steel, frankly. But I will tell you, people here, I think, are witnessing what many would consider to be a crisis of confidence and competence of the United States government. I think a lot of people are seeing that the United States is isolating itself. It is not doing itself any favors. Here we are declaring a trade war in virtually every country in the world where there are legitimate, real issues with China, but we've isolated ourselves. And this is a problem. And so people, you get back to the Steel Belt regions that people call, I hate to use the term Rust Belt, but people here have figured out that
he's misgendering the Rust Belt, dude. No. How dare you?
That, we are in a dynamic economy. Their heads aren't buried in the 1950s or the 1970s, thinking that we are going to go back to those days. These economies have evolved and people have largely adjusted. But right now, they're worried about their 401ks. They're worried about price increases. And that is really what's driving the debate now. I think it's imperative that the Trump administration reverse this policy because this is not going to end well.
Dominic, what are business leaders generally saying about the future and how what's going on today may be an indicator of some problems in the future?
Sure, Jose. I don't believe that the vast majority of the CEOs, CFOs, and senior business leaders that we talk to, I don't think their story has changed at all over the course of the last several weeks, and certainly not in the last couple of them. It hasn't changed from the most senior level for the big reason that, for the most part, the theme that they've been talking about has been that tariffs are generally not good for the American economy. We got a refresh in terms of that economic commentary in the last day or so just. Today, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink was on CNBC just earlier this morning, and he basically said that he thinks we're very close, if not already in a recession right now. He's also the head of the world's biggest asset manager, so he kind of has a different view of how things are moving along. He made similar comments to the Economic Club of New York this week when he said that other CEOs also think the U.S. is, quote, probably in a recession. JP Morgan Chase reported its latest results this morning. As part of that release, the CEO of America's most valuable bank, Jamie Dimon, said that the economy is facing considerable turbulence, including the negative of trade wars, ongoing sticky inflation, high fiscal deficits, amongst other things. He also did, though, mention the potential positives of things like tax reform and deregulation. I would also point out
the positives like deregulation. Yes. I don't like clean drinking water. I don't like buildings that stand. I like dirty air. I like when companies can put whatever ingredients they want in their foods, and I can't do anything about it. I like when there's asbestos in my walls. That's what I like. The positive, like deregulation.
One more anecdote here. Fellow big bank CEO Charlie Scharf over at Wells Fargo said that a timely resolution to the trade wars would benefit U.S. consumers, U.S. businesses, and the U.S. markets. So, Jose, you can also
resolution, dude. Just say it, coward, bro. Just say it.
Expect to hear a lot more CEO commentary throughout the course of the next several.
Oh boy, CEO commentary. That's what I want more of.
Weeks, because just about all of them will be making public comments during their quarterly earnings releases, and a lot of them, Jose, will be addressing tariffs and trade wars.
Usha Vance says her husband, J.D. Vance, is very lonely in his role as vice president. It can be a very, very lonely, lonely world. I'm such a bitch. This is so funny. I don't know that he's asking me for advice so much as it can be very lonely, lonely world to not share with someone. God, dude, this fucking photo of Vans with the red dots, it gets me every time. Oh my God. Oh my God. What is this? Asked what it was like to be an Indian American woman in MAGA land, described by her interviewer as full of blondes and Botox and facelifts, the second lady said, "I'm laughing because it would be really hard for me to be blonde. That color would look totally absurd." Okay. Excellent. Good. Yes, we're talking about the important things. But one quick question. Did she say thank you even once? Oh, dude. It's like, you know, it's bad when like we have the vice president talking about how lonely his life is. He's just so lonely. And then average Americans are making TikToks about depression era pies.
It was a dessert that was born out of a necessity during the Great Depression when ingredients were scarce. It's made by pouring water into a prepared pie crust. Then you sprinkle flour and sugar right on top with a drizzle of vanilla. The slices of butter on top add some richness while the flour and the sugar work its magic and turn into almost like a custard.
It's actually like really good. So I decided to make this because it seems like it could be fun. It's not because, you know, the economy's collapsing or we all might need to be eating stuff like this. No, it's because this could be really good. Boy, I'm sad. Wow, just so...
A drizzle of vanilla, huh? Good thing we will still have that.
Well, good enough, I guess. We're all fucked anyway. That is, without a doubt, one of the weirdest things I have ever eaten. If you gave this to me and didn't tell me anything, I would be like, why would you put Elmer's glue in food? That it doesn't belong there. I give this the most depressing thing I've ever eaten out of 10. Okay, bye.
You will eat the water pie and you will like it. 7 ways to turn a can of tuna into lunch or even dinner. You will eat cans of cat food and you will like it. I don't really have a reason for showing this one, but I just kind of wanted to show it to you guys. Soup. Soup.